breaking news. So this isn't part of the big bill that we were just talking about, but just a couple hours ago, FHFA, the Federal Housing Finance Administration, or whatever that stands for, announced that as of now, that rent payments can now be used as part of your credit score when qualifying for mortgages with Fannie and Freddie.
Welcome to Drunk Real Estate.
Grab a drink and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to episode 102 of Drunk Real Estate. I am Kyle Wilson, Ashley Wilson's husband, and I got the gang here all together. Mauricio looks like he's on a beach or on the moon or something. Where are you at right now, buddy?
Dude, it's my first episode up at the ranch.
This is your new house, right?
Yeah, it's a new ranch, and I don't know. We'll see how it goes. It's the first time. My house is under complete quarantine, so I can't get in the house. I'm doing it outside.
So what makes it a ranch exactly, as opposed to like
your cowboy hat and your boots? Don't you have to wear one of those like leather, like ties with the two strings hanging down?
No. What makes it? I don't know. There's a bunch of horses around here and goats, and I don't know, trees, farming.
I mean, do you actually have those things on your property, horses and goats?
I just freaking got here. No. But we're gonna get a goat, and then we're getting some chickens. I took some notes from Tessa when I was at AJ's house a couple months ago, and we'll eventually get some horses, and we'll get some animals. My Heidi wants a cow.
At some point soon, it'll be a ranch.
You got to talk to Ashley Kerr. She's got a family of goats living on her property, and they go around their little lawnmowers.
They're totally lawnmowers. You know, they rent them out. Did you know that you can rent like 10 goats to just go on your property? And because it costs like a crap load to get this thing landscaped. I'm like, why don't we just get some goats? They'll eat it. They'll graze and just basically take care of the landscaping.
There's like a service. You can hire them, and they bring in like 100 goats, and they're done in like 4 hours.
Yep, exactly. It's amazing what they do. So yeah, I kind of want to get some goats.
I mean, how do they have to like stand on their back legs to use the trimmers on the big bushes? Like
they have harnesses. They put them on their backs. You just put them on their backs, and then you can control them by remote control from your house, and just do it that way. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Got it.
Nice. Well, is there any alcohol on the ranch yet?
Dude, there's nothing around here. So in order to get anything, I've got to drive like an hour to get something. But I did get something. I went to the local store, which is again like an hour away. Got a little. What am I drinking? I'm drinking Sonoma Cutter. A little Sonoma Cutter action today.
Cool. Jay, how's it going, man?
Good. Good. Had a birthday yesterday, so I'm old now, turned 39. And
is it 58?
39. 39. I'm getting old.
Younger than me.
Yeah, your hair's kind of thinning out a little bit. You look a little bit older.
Yeah, my hair's been thinning for a long time. Thanks for reminding me. No, all is good. I'm going to disappoint you guys a little bit tonight. I decided now that I just reached another year older, I need to take care of myself a little bit better and need to get a little bit more serious about the eating healthy. And so I'm not drinking tonight. I'm sure I'll return next week. But for tonight, I'm just going with the coffee.
Kyle, you going to put up with this?
No, he's joking. He's not like... He all of a sudden decides the day before our podcast he's going to start drinking, and then tomorrow he's going to decide he's back on it. No, he's kidding. He's just brought a coffee, and then he's got something off to the side.
Yeah, I'll surprise you mid-episode. What are you waiting for?
I'm waiting for the joke to drop.
No joke. I'm drinking coffee tonight,
dude. So you're not going to drink, and you're not going to talk about real estate. Like, what's the point?
I don't even have a topic tonight.
I don't remember the last time anyone was drunk on the podcast. Like
I was last week. I started early.
I got pretty sloppy last week too because I was on vacation. But
that's rare.
Yeah. AJ, what do you how you doing over there?
Doing good.
You got a nice little breeze in that room. It looks like.
Yeah, it's hot here. It's gonna be the hottest day of the year, so we're burning up.
It gets hot in Boise.
It does. So it was pouring rain and 50 degrees a few days ago.
Well, hopefully they got some nice ice cold Diet Coke for you.
Oh, they do. In the red Solo cup, look, you can even see the condensation on that crap.
Oh, it's sweating. Oh,
yeah.
It's like food porn right there.
Now you know it's good.
Oh, I love it. Well, I'm going since I'm back. I got my own collection back, and I'm going with the Still Austin cast strength. It's for you, I guess, AJ. You're still Austin, right?
I'm still Austin.
116 proof. So you're complaining about people getting drunk. This will get me there pretty quickly.
There you go.
As I have been predicting consistently since last year, I might add, the SEC looks to bring back the proposed finder rule. It will allow capital raisers to get paid. I'm just kidding. I was just reading Mauricio's email that he sent out today. So we have breaking news that today has come out. The SEC is looking to bring back the proposed finder rule. Now, it's not, from what I understand, nothing has been agreed upon yet, right, Mauricio? But this is just good news that it's coming.
Especially if you know what the hell the finder rule is.
Yeah. So, I mean, my predictions are just coming true. I mean, we should do a predictions episode, and I'm already working on doing like the prediction from like 6 months ago, and then the current prediction or whatever. But yeah, why don't we define what the finder rule is or what the challenge is, and then I think people get really, really excited whether you're a syndicator, capital raiser, receiving money, or you're wanting to just refer, a couple of your buddies maybe to, hey, I know a syndicator. Hey, I know somebody who's looking to put some money. Maybe I can make a referral and actually get paid for it, which is something that you usually can't do. So, so this is actually let me just tell you what the issues are, and then we'll talk about what the proposed rule is and where we are today. Because I don't want to get super excited about it yet, but it's coming. So it's really pumped. So
I don't know. Your emails seemed pretty excited. So
because I knew it was coming. I just didn't think it was going to come this fast. I actually thought the accredited investor update was going to happen first, meaning, it'll be easier to become an accredited investor, take an exam. I thought that was coming, and maybe now it's going to really get fast tracked. And I thought this would get done before the end of the administration. And so to see it today, that they're going to be, advancing and talking about it in a couple of weeks, and then from there, I think there'll be a proposed rule. But the issue we're talking about is literally getting paid to raise money for other people, right? That's generally considered sort of broker activity, right? So if I have somebody, and let's say I know Jay, you guys have Kyle. I was like blanking on your name, Kyle. Like, who are you again, Kyle? You guys have a fund. You guys are raising money, and I, Mauricio, have a couple of investors. And hey, I just want to refer them over to you guys. I know you guys have a great fund, a great product, a great investment. I know a friend, a doctor friend, or whatever. I'd like to make an introduction. I'd like to introduce you guys. And hey, if the guy invests, I'd love to just get a little piece, wet my beak a little bit, give me a little piece of the action. And the challenge is I can't do that right now, right? I can't.
Now let's be clear real quick, Mauricio, because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there saying, I know a dozen people who do that now and they get paid for it and whatever. I think the important thing here is, there are a lot of people who are doing that right now. They're raising capital for other people and they're getting paid to raise capital, or they're getting a piece of the deal. But correct me if I'm wrong, in most cases, they are breaking the law.
Yes, there's a lot of breaking the law going on right now. I mean, the rule is if you want to raise money for other people or make referrals or introductions to get paid, you generally need to have a broker-dealer license, right? Just like in order to practice medicine, you need a medical license. To practice law, you need a law license. If I'm going to refer somebody and raise money for other people, I need a broker's license, right? And that even applies to this infamous co-GP model, right? There's so many sponsors out there that are aggregating, getting together with multiple GPs, the co-GP model, and inevitably one of those people is really there to bring in the money. So they bring in a co-GP, they pay them, basically, depending on how much money they can raise into the syndication, they'll pay them 5%, 10%, 15% of the GP, and most of the time that's an illegal compensation because it's transaction based, meaning they're getting compensated based on how much they bring in or the fact that they even brought money in the first place. So this is it's kind of a rampant violation. And then other people just don't know. They just want to make a referral. I'm like, hey, I got somebody refer me. Hey, give me something. Give me a little, even if it's not cash, it might be a little, something.
Well, because it happens all the time in other industries, right? Even real estate agents, you can refer people and get commissions, and it's not uncommon. A lot of other.
But I think you need a real estate license to get a commission.
You do, but that's another one that a lot of people break the rules, hope not to get caught, and so it is pretty common with real estate agents.
Well, and getting a real estate agent license is much different than a broker dealer license.
I just found out today, by the way, it costs about $1 million to set up a broker dealer's brokerage firm. So. But the problem is, so with the SEC and even me, it's like I feel bad because I keep telling people you need a license, you need a license, you need a license. But the reality is, broker dealers, they don't get out of bed for like $25-50 million deals, right? Like if you're not, it's very difficult to go find a broker that's going to raise $500,000 or $1 million for you. So there's like this gap in the marketplace where you're too small to really be able to pay a broker, but yet I can't do all this stuff. So there's this gap that this is what this proposed rule was meant to address. And I was talking about this a long time ago. Literally, this proposed rule, which is on the books, it's about a 40-page proposed rule, came out in 2020, right before the end of the Trump administration, Trump #1. And so the SEC passed this proposed rule, and I'll go through what it is so that you guys can get an idea of what it is. And it, then the election happened, Biden got elected, there was a new SEC commissioner, and it just got tabled. And so even though the proposed rule was supposed to go out to comments, there was like a 30-day comment period. Presumably they got comments back. And then the next step would have been to put forward a final rule based on the comments and the feedback on the proposed rule. And I was saying back then, it probably takes 6 to 9 months, and then another probably, 60 days for it to be officially on the books. And then just nothing happened. And I finally just stopped talking about it. And then we found out through some other colleagues who called the SEC, and they're like, yeah, that's just not a priority. And so they basically tabled it for the last 4 years. But I was, one of my predictions of the Trump administration was that this would come back. And my thought was that they were going to basically look at the proposed rule, probably tweak it a little bit, and then put out a proposed rule again for people to look at it, make comments, and then come up with a final rule.
Since they already did comments and all that stuff, could they just go based off the previous one?
Theoretically, I mean, they could just say, hey, we already came up with a proposed rule. But remember, it was a different commissioner, different staff, different team. And so they're going to want to look at it. And my guess is they'll probably put it out to comments again. And by the way, we're not even there yet. What they've done now is they've put it back on the agenda to review it again. Like, it's on their agenda now. They're getting together. I think it's about 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, where they're actually talking about Reg A as well, but they're talking about this finder rule. And what it is essentially is it is going to allow people to make introductions, almost like it's called a finder rule. So it's like your introductions, but you're allowed to make introductions of investors to sponsors and then get paid transaction-based compensation, like get a commission. So it exempts you from being a broker. If you can fit into this kind of narrow, but not super narrow, but like if you can fit into the terms of what I'm about to talk to you, then you would literally be able to refer somebody. I could refer somebody to Jay and say, Jay, I've got Bobby here. He's looking to invest. I'll make the introduction, maybe even get a little bit involved. And then if Bobby invests with Jay for $100,000, we can agree that, hey, you're going to pay me a 5% commission, for example. So that's why it's exciting. Now, there are some limitations. So let me go through some of the limitations, but that's the premise. The premise is I can start sending referrals out, making introductions, and not have to have a broker-dealer license and still get paid transaction-based compensation, which is why it's so exciting. But there are some limitations. So let's talk about some limitations. The first one is...
Well, and just to clarify too, Marie, so these are the limitations from the past proposed rule, right? So they
correct, yeah. So before, let's even... I know we're going to really... This is like the mother of all hooks here. We're just going to stretch it out and not get into it. But yeah, so the proposed rule was sent out, again, 5 years ago in 2020. And now they're revisiting that rule, right? So there's about a 37-page proposed rule, which is out there for everybody to see. And if we want to link it to the show notes, we can. And then they're going to be looking at that, revisiting it, and then figuring out what they're going to do with it. Whether they're just going to say, hey, let's just put it out for comments again, or maybe just, hey, we already have comments. Let's just take the comments and put it in the final. There's a bazillion different ways you can go with it. My gut tells me, and I don't have any insider info, but my gut tells me they'll just probably put it out to comment again, and there might be some tweaks to it. But generally speaking, the parameters that they put last time was that you could refer or make introductions to accredited investors only. So that's kind of like your first main thing, right? Which kind of makes sense, because if I'm making an introduction, the idea is like, hey, they're sophisticated enough, they can kind of understand what's going on, they can appreciate the fact that there's...
Well, and you can advertise to accredited investors anyway, right? So like it's...
Well, so let's define a couple things though. So we're talking about the syndicator, right? The person that's putting the deal together. That's called the issuer, right? Because it's issuing the securities. And then there's the finder, right? Who's actually making the introductions to the issuer. So Jay, Kyle, AJ as well. You guys have LLC. When you guys raise capital, you guys are kind of the issuers, even though it's your LLC is the issuer. And so let's, for this example, call Mauricio the finder. So you and I can get into an arrangement and say, hey guys, I know a bunch of people, or I'm going to go out there and I've got people that I know want to invest, which is actually probably accurate, right? Especially CPAs. If you're a CPA listening to the show,
I was just about to say, my CPA is going to love this.
you guys should be jumping up and down because, as maybe not just a CPA, but if you're a tax strategist and you're like, hey guys, you guys have got to go invest in oil and gas, you got to invest in real estate, you got to do this, you got to do that. There's always been this challenge where like CPAs was like, hey, you want to invest in oil and gas? Good, go talk to Bobby over here. Oh, you want to invest in real estate? Go talk to Jay and AJ, and those guys have great, whatever. But they can't get compensated right now, right? And so there's actually some CPAs that try and figure out how to get around that, and you call it a marketing fee, you call it whatever. But right now, those guys are going to be able to say, hey, man, I got a client. They need to put $1 million into real estate. They need the depreciation now that bonus depreciation is back. I'm going to make an introduction to both of you guys. So maybe one's multifamily, one's self-storage. And hey, if they invest in your deal, we have an agreement that you'll pay me 5% commission, 8%
Here's my
commission.
affiliate link.
Yeah, it's like an affiliate link, exactly.
So you said the first rule is the person that they refer that invests has to be accredited. Does it matter if it's a 506B or 506C deal? Meaning,
it has nothing to do with that. Yeah, that's on the issuer side. That we have nothing to do with the issuer. I'm just saying, if I want to make an introduction to you guys, the person that I'm introducing has to be accredited. And I don't have to verify. I just have to have a reasonable belief that they're accredited. I'm not going to start pulling and looking at their tax returns. But if I believe and I have a reasonable belief, and maybe best practice for me to get a questionnaire from them, who knows? But if I have a reasonable belief that my person is accredited, then I can make that introduction to you guys. Okay, that's step number one. Step number two is I cannot go and start advertising to go find a bunch of investors to refer to you. Right? Like they have to be already it's almost like you have to have I as the finder have to have a relationship already with the people I'm going to be referring to. Otherwise, everybody's going to go on social media and try and find LPs, and then they're going to make that's not the point, right? The point is I already have people in my world, whether they're clients, whether they're family members, and I already know them, and they're accredited, and I can be like, hey, I know you're looking to put some money to work. Let me make an introduction to my buddies. I know them well, and I make the introduction, right? So that's the other thing that's really important. There has to be a written agreement between me and you guys. So between the finder and the issuer, there has to be a written agreement that says, here's what I'm going to be doing, and this is how much we're going to get paid, and kind of the scope of what our agreement is. Because technically, this is an important point, I think. Technically, I'm affiliated with you guys, right? I'm kind of working on behalf of the syndicator, right? I'm the finder. I'm working on your behalf, and I'm going out there, and I'm finding people to bring to you. So we have an agreement that, hey, if I bring somebody to you, you're going to pay me X%, right? So that's kind of that's kind of the big parameters. There's obviously a disclosure requirement, which makes sense, right? So if I have, again, I'm going to use this fiction, or let's start with my mom. I'm going to refer you to my mom, right? So my mom, I'm going to refer you to my mom. And
and not necessary because your mom and I are close.
So my mom's accredited. Obviously, I know my mom, so I didn't advertise it. So I have to disclose to my mom prior to making the introduction that, hey, I'm going to introduce you to these guys, and we have an agreement, and if you invest with these guys, I'm going to get a cut. I'm going to get a percentage of whatever the arrangement that you and I have. I got to disclose that to the person I'm going to be referring you to ahead of time, which kind of makes sense. What's interesting in this thing is there are actually certain things I can do as the finder that goes a little bit beyond just making the introduction, right? Because finders usually just make an introduction and get paid for the introduction. But according to the proposed rule anyway, there's a few things I can do, and I wrote them down because I didn't want to miss it. Number one is I can identify and screen the investors. So I can send them I can go to my list and say, hey, here's a questionnaire. I want to make sure you're accredited. And then I can find out, what kind of deals you're looking for. Are you looking for cash flow? Are you looking for appreciation? Are you looking for tax benefits? Like, what is it that you need so I can go maybe connect you with some people I know? So that's something I can do. I can actually distribute the PPM and the disclosure document. So I can actually have a copy of the materials and I can email it to them and say, hey, by the way, Jay and Kyle and AJ, they have this great deal. I actually shouldn't say I have a great deal, but they have a deal, and here's the information if you want to take a look at it. And so I can send that information to them. I can discuss the information about you guys. So, when you're raising money, you obviously give the investors kind of your bios and your information about you guys. I can discuss that information with the person I'm referring to. Hey, this is Jay. He's been doing this thing for a lot of years. He's experienced. Kyle's been doing this. AJ is the king of self-storage, blah, blah, blah. I can do all that stuff. And I can even arrange meetings between the finder and you guys. And I can actually participate. I can actually be on the call. So I can schedule a Zoom call and actually can be on the call. Right now, I'm not saying I'm there to say anything substantial, but I can be there. I can make the introduction, but I can physically be on the call, which I thought was pretty interesting. What I cannot do is stuff that's typical for broker stuff, right? So I cannot provide advice on whether this is a good investment or not, whether they should invest, what the valuation of this thing. So I got to stay away from giving you my opinion as to whether this is a good deal or not, or whether you should invest or not, because that's broker activity. So stay away from that.
Let me ask you a question before you go on, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm going to interrupt. Let's say I want to make an introduction. I invest with AJ, and I obviously love AJ, love his deals. And my brother comes to visit me from out of town. He's like, I'm looking for something to invest in. I want to invest with AJ, or I'm sorry, I want to invest with somebody. Do you know anybody? And I'm like, hey, let me introduce you to my friend AJ. I'm getting ready to invest in this deal. He's like, well, I don't even know how to evaluate deals. Can you walk me through the deal? Tell me if it's a good deal, et cetera, et cetera.
That's a definite no-no.
Even if it's my brother.
You're not an investor representative. You're not a broker dealer. You're not there to comment about the quality of the deal. You're literally, think of it as you're making the introduction. Your job is to make the introduction.
Got it.
Right.
Okay.
So you want to stay away from, you shouldn't even be going through the PPM. You can send them the PPM. It's like, hey, I'm in, like you said, I'm investing in AJ's deal. I've got the PPM here. Let me forward you the business plan and the PPM. Take a look at it. And then you can tell us something about AJ. Hey, look, I've known AJ for 10 years and he's considered one of the top self-storage guys and he's got a huge team and he's and I've invested, like all that stuff you can talk about AJ, but you don't want to be talking about anything specific about the deal.
That's super interesting to me because it's kind of like one or the other, right? Like you either have to be like super involved in the deal and know everything about it and be part of the GP in order to raise money, or you kind of have to be not involved at all. It's one or the other.
Yeah, and I remember writing about this when it came out. I'm not even sure I don't know if you could be a real co-GP and do that. I think I think the way it would work for the co-GPs is that people who are now improperly being a co-GP should just not be a co-GP and just be the finder, like not be part of the thing. Because the other thing you can't do is you can't be involved in helping structure the deal, right? So you can't be like, hey, AJ's got this. Well, actually, in syndications, they don't really structure the deal much. There's no negotiation, but theoretically, you couldn't be like, hey, let's talk to AJ. I know you want to put in a lot of money. Maybe we can negotiate better terms. And if you put in $500,000, you can't do any of that because, again, that's broker dealer stuff. You can't handle any funds, which I think makes sense. But you can't be. This is the key, which I think was what I remember last time 5 years ago on the co-GP model, is you cannot be involved in the preparation of the materials, right, of the PPM and the marketing materials. And so that's where the co-GP is like, okay, well, if you're part of the co-GP, you're part of the sponsor. You're kind of involved. That's a little bit of a gray zone. Like you arguably you are involved in the preparation of even though you're not the individual maybe, but the company as a whole, the GP team, is the one that's putting together all the marketing materials and the disclosure documents. So you being involved in that may or may not. That's a little bit of a vague thing for me. So my whole point is the reality is, let's be honest, right? The reality is there's a lot of co-GPs in there that are primarily there to raise the money, and they're trying to manufacture duties for them so that they can fit into this exemption. So if this were to pass, and again, I probably should have started with this. This is not law. This is not a final rule. There's not even a proposed rule because the proposed rule is sitting there and they're revisiting it. But this is nowhere. We're at least 6 to 12 months away from this actually happening. But so it's not. Don't go out there and start doing this, right? So just let's make sure. Maybe we should start with that. But let's re-edit this so that's at the beginning of this presentation. But if you're one of those co-GPs that are basically forcing yourself to be a co-GP so you can fit into this exemption, even though it's not a clean fit, what I think I would be recommending if this ever passes is I would say, forget about the co-GP. Don't be a co-GP. Don't come in and primarily raise money and get 10% of the co-GP. Just act as a finder and make the introductions to the team. And if they invest, you just get your percentage of whatever you've negotiated. And maybe it's a GP share, maybe it's a Class B share or whatever, but you're not actually part of the co-GP team making decisions or actively being involved, because I think that might violate, one of these provisions of not being participating in the marketing material.
So what I'm hearing is the role of the finder has to be arm's length on both sides. You have to be arm's length from the person you're referring. You can't basically be an advisor to them. You can't like sit down and walk them through the deal and help them with it. And on the other side, you have to be arm's length from the GPs and the syndicators and the issuer by not participating in creating the documents, by not working on the deal, et cetera, et cetera. Is that kind of fair to say?
I would say so, except again, I think I mentioned earlier, an important point though is that you are considered an agent for the issuer. So you're an agent of the co-GP team, or the GP team. Again, this is proposed. We don't have anything, but I would almost stay away from because if you're either a legitimate co-GP or you're not, right? So if you're a legitimate co-GP doing real work, then we don't need this. It's like you're there, you're doing the work, and you're bringing in as part of your thing. Part of it is you're bringing the capital, no problem. If you're not a legitimate piece, then I would say get out of there, right? Just become a finder and just make sure you're abiding by all the limitations, all the regulations, and just get paid transaction-based comp based on the arrangement you've had with the thing.
Well, I guess that's why, when I'm thinking about this, I don't know how much this will necessarily change things, just because the reason that people become GPs to raise money is because when at the beginning you don't really have the money to pay them, right? Like that money has to come from somewhere. You'd have to take it out of the deal in order to pay somebody to do that, because there are ways legally right now to kind of, since this has been going on since, 2015 or whenever, where people have been trying to raise money for deals without actually setting up the deal or doing due diligence and stuff like that. There are ways now with, the fund of funds model, where basically you can raise a fund, and the way you could set up in the syndication that they can get extra shares, and that can be their compensation and stuff like that. There's legal ways. There's that tribe vest I know that we talked to before, Jay, where you can set up like a little mini fund of funds without having like all the costs, because the fund of funds can get expensive. So there are ways for people to actually just get cash.
I've been on record with a lot of issues with the fund of funds model, but the only reason people are doing the fund of fund model is to get around the fact that they're acting as unlicensed brokers. But if this rule passes, there's no need for you to put together a fund of funds to go raise $500,000 or $1 million. You can just make the introduction and get paid directly.
At the same time, though, like I've found in this space, people can get very protective of their investors. And it's one of those things where like, hey, like you're going to have some sort of agreement that like, hey, if I pass this investor to you, I get 5% of what they invest this time and every subsequent deal. And then you kind of have to just trust that person, that they're, keeping it tight knit and treating your investor well and doing stuff like that. Versus I find that people, if you partner with people and stuff like that, like they are very protective of their investors. They don't want anyone else talking to their investors. They want to kind of keep it close knit. And so like in the instances with these like fund of funds things, someone with a fund of funds, like I know the one guy who like, you can't even send updates to their investors. Update has to go to them, and then they tell their investors, and they do everything
on the fund of funds model.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because the investor is the investor is the fund that you manage. So yeah, that would make sense if the update goes to the investor, which is the fund which you manage, and then you would then pass that along to your investors. So I get that.
But like they don't even want you talking to their individual investors. So like I don't know. I thought it was more interesting when I thought you could kind of just give GP now, because that's
and I think you still can. It's just, again, we've talked about this before, that there's a vernacular of GP, but remember on the GP there's the management side, the manager, and then there's the carried interest part, the class B for most of you. So there's a lot of KPs out there that are just on the carried interest part. Like they don't want to be, they're not on the a lot of KPs aren't even on the freaking thing anywhere. They just own a piece of the carried interest, the 20% or the 30%. So I could see a situation like that where like I say, hey guys, I'm going to refer a bunch of people to you. I don't want to get cash. So in exchange for me referring these 5 or 6 people, I just want, 2% of the carried interest, like of the class B. I don't want anything to do with the management. I'm not part of the meetings. I'm not involved at all. My compensation is going to be 2% of the class B, 2% of the 20% or 2% of the 30%, right? I can see that arrangement being made.
Yeah. For me, this is a game changer as somebody that raises the capital for us. I have a lot of investors that I'm positive know other people who might be willing to invest. It's just getting them to feel like it's worth their effort to go out and talk to those people. And so like I had somebody come to me today and say, hey, he's a doctor. I have a doctor friend who's looking to invest, and I've been trying to get him to reach out to you. I know he's been busy. And I would have loved to have been able to say, that's great. And if he does happen to invest, I will give you 5%. of whatever he invests, just as a thank you, referral fee, commission, finder's fee, whatever
Or
you want
maybe
to
a
call it.
discount, to their investment. Like instead of 50K, it's 40K or whatever. I don't know.
Right. Let me ask you a question. Could I say to that investor, I'll put you in a different class of shares, like something that gives more pref or a better split, or is that not fair to other investors?
Or not in writing.
Well, I'm about not writing, but again, compensation is compensation, right? Everybody gets caught up in this idea that compensation is cash, but compensation can be shares, and whether they're co-GP shares, whether they're preferred shares, whatever it is, again, as long as it's disclosed to all the other investors and saying, hey, part of our, when we do syndications now, some clients do use broker dealers and they pay commissions, and that's just disclosed. Hey, some percentage of our raise is going to go towards paying these commissions to these broker dealers. It'll be the same thing. It's like part of our raise is going to go to giving shares in this preferred thing, which will, dilute everybody else. But in the long run, it's still better. But as long as it's disclosed, you should be. I don't think that's going to be an issue.
I mean, I could literally see people making a career out of being a finder.
No, I mean, trust me, I've thought of that. I mean, I know, again, CPAs probably, but even me, it's like, people ask me all the time, hey, do you know anyone? And I tend to stay away from
You can't
that.
advertise though, right, Jay? So like you'd have to basically set up a side business that is maybe an educational business.
Well, that's interesting. So when we talk about advertising, let's say I wanted to be a finder for AJ. I have a big mailing list. I have a big investor list. Could I reach out to that list and say, hey, I know of this self-storage deal. If anybody's looking to invest in self-storage, if somebody's looking for like a 5-year hold, ground-up self-storage deal, come talk to me. I'll happy to make an introduction. Could I just send something out to a list, or is that marketing publicly?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is you want to cut that list into who on that list. I would use the pre-existing relationship kind of thing. Like how many on that list, who do you really know, right? Who do you really have a relationship with? So let's cut it down to your 10,000 down to 2, right? So cut everybody that you know. And then from there, you still don't want to, you can't generally solicit. So there's an argument to be made that if you email blast 10,000 people, even if you say that could be considered general solicitation. So I think this has meant that, I think the gist of it, or the intent is really for this to be more one-on-one warfare. So
Or like a coaching program. I think this would be great for someone who's got a coaching program. Like even you, Mauricio, like you have a coaching program for syndicators and stuff like that. Like you could just float deals to people who are in your coaching program, right?
Yeah, like if I was on a coaching call and somebody said to me, hey, I've got a fund and I'm kind of looking for stuff, if anybody knows anything, blah, blah, blah. And then I could reach out to them individually and say, hey, you know what? Jay and Kyle and AJ, these guys have a deal. This is my understanding of the deal. Here's the deal. I'd be happy to make an introduction and again, do all the steps. And then I can make a one-on-one introduction. I think blasting it out to your list is probably problematic. But your example that you gave, Jay, I think is perfect. Like you have an investor, they have a bunch of people, or you just met one person and they're looking to invest and you want to give them to AJ, but you've got to have that agreement in place ahead of time, right? You've got to have that arrangement, that contract with AJ, that written agreement that says, AJ, anything I bring to you, AJ, if they invest, you're going to give me X% of the deal. And as long as it's disclosed to the investor, they acknowledge that you gave them all those disclosures. Again, it's all proposed, right? We're all kind of like, we don't know what the final rule is. There's no.
Well, I'm sure you're going to keep us abridged of it. You kind of have your finger on the pulse, but for the record, there are, as I said, there are ways that we could go out and, with fund of funds models, this tribe vest that I brought up. There's other options for legally people going out and getting people together to all invest in one deal. So, AJ, any final thoughts?
I agree with everything Mauricio says.
AJ's been just sitting there spent the last half hour making a list of all the people he knows who can bring him investors.
I've just messaged 1 million people. I'm like, game is on.
He scheduled the messages to go out 1 year from now. In 12 months, send this message.
Got to be on top of these things, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I still think CPAs are probably one of the best. I'm sure there are other industries that are really beneficial. Again, even for folks like me, I mean, I'll get questions all the time about, hey, do you have anybody? But then there's that potential conflict, right? So all these things have to be disclosed in the agreements and in all the potential conflicts of interest. You want to be disclosing those. But Dude, I think CPAs, man, the wealth strategists, all of our CPA friends that are already making those strategic recommendations to invest in specific deals, now they can have like a laundry list of options for them to go, hey, you need to go invest in oil and gas. Here are 5 people that I know well, I respect. Here's the background information for them. Let me make the introduction. Or let's schedule a Zoom call. Let me make an introduction. Let's all get together and do a call. I can then make the introduction of the call, step away, and then let you guys connect. And we'll have
Easy to keep track of it if you're the CPA too, right? You see all the money coming in and out.
Yeah,
if they
exactly.
invest.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Awesome. I think coaching programs too. I think that might be a thing. Anyway, we got to move on. We got to talk about the BBW, our BBB, BBC, no, the big beautiful bill. I do want to preface this though. I'll give everyone, if they want, in the beginning, if you want to talk about the bill in general, if you want to talk about like any issues you have with the bill, get it out of your system in the beginning, because then I want to just shift on only talking about real estate stuff. So obviously there's a lot of critics of the bill, mainly about the fact that they're not even hiding that this bill is adding to the deficit. At least back in the day, they used to hide it, right? They used to say, oh, this is, we're going to pay for these tax cuts by, it's going to increase business activity here, and the increase in tax revenues there is going to pay for it over the next 10 years. And that kept them being able to keep on a brave face and saying this isn't going to increase the deficit. Now they're not even trying. This is just a deficit bill, but we needed to get something done, and it is beneficial for real estate investors. So, Jay, I'll let you, I'm sure you got some issues with it to start, but everyone kind of gets their one thing to say, and then we're going to just talk about real estate.
I don't have my issues. I mean, the bill is, it's no better or worse than any of the crap the Democrats passed the last 4 years and overspent and put in their pork and their pet projects. I mean, my biggest problem is just like on the other side is the hypocrisy. We talk about we've got to cut the deficit, and we listened for 6 months about how Doge was going to save the country because if we didn't get the debt down, we're going to implode. And now we're adding $3 trillion. And we talked about how we need to get rid of all of these big bills, and we need to have single issue bills because it's too easy to hide stuff in there. And now we have the one big beautiful bill. There are big bills and there are beautiful bills. There are no big beautiful bills. And then
it's impossible for like these senators and Congress.
And I get it. It was literally the only way to pass the bill because of the reconciliation process and getting the debt limit increased. It had to be this way, or it had to be 180 degrees different. And then
was it Marjorie Taylor Greene that like 6 days after she voted yes for it, she came back and be like, I didn't realize that this was in the bill that I voted.
Yeah, I mean, it was the Nancy Pelosi. You got to pass it before you can find out.
But now you can actually upload it. You can upload it to ChatGPT and then ask it real fast, like, "Hey, what's in this thing?"
Yeah, and then the last piece is just I hate the Medicaid cuts. I mean, we talk in this country about how important it is to protect kids and protect people that can't protect themselves, and there are plenty of people that suck off the teat of the government and are collecting entitlements that they don't deserve, and people that could be working that aren't working. But there are also plenty of people out there that really can't protect themselves, kids, old people, disabled people, and cutting Medicaid and even Medicare. A lot of people don't realize this bill cut Medicare, not within the bill, but based on the reconciliation process, it's going to be required to cut about $400 billion in Medicare just to get the numbers to work. And so I don't like that. But again, I don't blame Republicans any more than Democrats who did the exact same thing for 4 years before. Pisses me off on both sides equally.
Yeah, I guess when you talk about hypocrisy, like my problem with the Medicaid and the SNAP and all that stuff is what they did is they added a shit ton of red tape, right? Like
Yeah, there's actually no cuts to Medicaid or Medicare. None.
Well, but de facto, they're not dumb, right? If you add red tape and more steps and, go to monthly reporting, go to instead of quarterly, you make all these changes. They know the data. By default, when you make those changes, less people are going to use it because it is harder to use. And I know Republicans know that, because when it comes to cutting red tape for small businesses, the exact same senators and exact same Congress people will scream at the top of their lungs about how we have to cut down the red tape. We have to cut down all the procedures that have to be done for these small businesses because these small businesses are hurting. But when it comes to people on Medicaid, when it comes to people who need the SNAP programs, they're doing the exact opposite where they're adding more red tape. And I would argue the people who are the least likely to be able to like upload a PDF. That sounds very easy for us to do. Oh, all you have to do is upload a PDF, and all you have to do is, there's just a few steps you have to do online. But for low income people who maybe don't have internet access, they go to the local library to do this and stuff. Like it's a huge hurdle for them to cross. So,
what new steps were added?
well, more reporting. First of all, you have to check in every month instead of quarterly. As far as
But what do you have to check in for? So I know there's more verification of the current rules. So you have to abide by current rules, which there were no recourse for prior. But
just as you said, the verification. There's so many more steps to get things verified,
so
and
did
there's
you
so
know it
many
holds the
stories.
same verification as every single other government entity now, where it didn't before? So I actually built a whole thing out of this because I was shocked when I heard about all the Medicaid and Medicare cuts. I'm like, what the heck? But there's actually no other government at all, not one that we have that allows for the government to not to disperse benefits without having those things. So if you look at everything from child tax credit, earned income tax credit, stimulus checks, mortgage deductions, student loan forgiveness, Medicare enrollment, VA healthcare, ACA subsidies, COBRA coverage, retirement benefits, SSDI, SSI, FFASA, Section 8 housing, SNAP, the new Medicare rules abides those. All of those you cannot get if you do not do it, but Medicaid did. So now you have to follow the same rules that we had to for everything else, including taxes.
But like in general, though, there's expanded work and reporting requirements. People have to work more. Like they have to work longer. So
they have to verify the work. The hours didn't change.
But the requirements for they now, I think, what is it, 80 hours a month now? They upped the age, so now it goes up to 65. It was 60. It was 55. They have to. What else was there? I don't know. I'm not gonna. I wasn't prepared to have to list all of these. But I do remember looking through it all and just saying this is a lot more red tape. This is a lot more frequent, and for people who are on the low end of the poverty scale, a lot of these people aren't very good at this stuff anyway. And it's just going to. They know that creating more reporting requirements, more red tape, is going to lead to a lot of people not being able to do it. Because as I said, they argue that exact same thing when it comes to small businesses. Small businesses, when they come up for cuts and for more reporting requirements for things like that, they all scream at the top of their lungs that we need to cut the regulations. We got to cut red tape. We got to cut reporting requirements. We got to cut all these things. It's too cumbersome for these small businesses. They're getting overburdened. But at the same point, they're saying this is a good idea. So I guess that's my problem.
And I want to get into the real estate stuff, but I do want to say one, because I want my one cut at the non-real estate stuff. But like this, I think highlights like all these. Let's take Medicaid, like everybody's talking about. Let's just even assume there's some sort of cuts. What pisses me off, and this is not just this bill, but it's just throughout history, right? Is you start looking at the pork barrel, right? The crap that the federal government, that our taxpayers' dollars are going towards. Every dollar that's going towards one of these pork barrels is a dollar that could have gone to Medicaid. It could have gone to the homeless. It could have gone to whatever your cause is. It could have gone to that. The one that stands out the most, and there's probably, and I'm not prepared to talk about it, there's like 100 of them, is like we're spending, think about this, and I know it sounds like not a lot of money, but $85 million to transport the space shuttle from the Smithsonian to some other museum in Texas, like in Houston, Texas. The government is spending money, not private, not charity, like the government is spending. PBS and the public broadcast system, I don't even know why we have a public, I understand why we needed it 50 years ago, 100 years ago, but in today's day and age, why are we spending $500 million to go towards public broadcasting systems and the thing when that could go to Medicaid? So every dollar that's going to these pork barrels that are going to the Alaska fishermen so they can have me, like, it's so specific that if you just add every dollar that is taken away from Medicaid and everything else that you feel is important, that's what drives me crazy about all this stuff. It's like, it's not necessarily everything else, but it's like, I feel like we should be starting the budget with $0 and start building from zero versus starting from where it was last year and figuring out, we got to cut this, we got to add this. Like, no, we start from zero and we've got $3 million or $3 trillion of revenue coming in from taxes. We got to figure out where are we going to spend that $6 trillion. Let's start with the basics: Social Security, Medicaid, national defense, whatever, interest on the debt. There's certain things that we just can't mess around, and start that way. Because why am I paying any amount of money to transfer the shuttle from one museum to another is beyond me.
Fair enough. Do you want to get into the real estate though? Because I mean,
Yeah, I'd like to give my criticism first and my thoughts.
okay, all right, go ahead. Sorry.
So, first of all, the criticism is it's a monstrosity of a bill that kills the economy. It destroys our ability to lower interest rates. Not only did they not go far enough on the cuts, they didn't do anything, they added to it. It's not only hypocrisy, it's disgusting. And I get the argument where they're like, it wouldn't have changed no matter what, so we got to get our stuff that we wanted because of how it's set up. But it's like, you didn't even try. You didn't try. They just wanted it. It's disgusting. And it kills the economy. It's like literally putting a weight, like 1,000-pound weight on the economy and telling it to swim. It destroys our ability to do financing. It kills any long-term economic gains. There's a direct correlation with output and debt over the economy. You slow the economy down and you kill its ability to recover. It's horrible. It's the single thing that the worst thing the government could do. I hate almost everything about it. But I do actually, the Medicaid and Medicare, that thing shocked me because I thought that Medicaid and Medicare was getting cut because everybody said it was. There is no changes in qualification whatsoever for Medicare. None. The qualifications didn't change. And also for the only thing that abides is the already previous qualifications have to be done, and they have to be done in the certain way. And so I've been having this thought exercise where it goes, they state, well, this means that less people will be taking out. Okay, but if qualified people can get it, but they have to go through the same routine, and this is where I started to look at government agencies, and we all have to do it from everything, from taxes to, so if you don't go through the qualifications, you don't get government disbursements. If you want a refund on your taxes, but you don't do it in the right time, in the right way, get it certified, on and on, you don't get it. So I think that's the most ridiculous thing in the world that we hold it to, but especially that it's presented as we're cutting it. Eligibility was not cut. They've estimated $84 billion a year in fraud in these programs. $84 billion. Simply because...
Yeah, but that's 84 billion is 84 billion is a far shy of the 1.0 trillion in Medicare spending that they're projecting to go down. So like obviously what they're cutting isn't just fraud.
They're not cutting anything. So I think that's my big thing with this. There are no benefits have been cut.
I don't know how to, I guess I can only refer to all the independent studies that have done that's saying like how much, like, and they literally say that.
I know that's the crazy thing about it. So they say it, but when you look at it, there's no cuts, none. The qualifications didn't change.
You just got to upload the bill to ChatGPT and ask it. Where does it say?
I mean, I don't, like everything I read, the word cut might be the distinction here. But they are going to, their changes are projecting $1 trillion less in spending towards Medicaid. So yet you can call it something different than a cut, but they're going to be spending $1 trillion less on Medicaid.
Not one qualified person is not eligible for it.
It's not the eligibility. And I'm trying not to. I know I already spoke my piece, but the issue is that the way Medicaid works is that some of it's paid by the government, the federal government, and some of it's paid by the states. And what the federal government did in this bill is it said is we're gonna reduce the amount of federal subsidy to all of the states, or I don't know if it's all the states, but at least many of the states, not Alaska. We're going to reduce the amount of subsidy to many states, and we're going to allow the states, or we're going to encourage the states to increase their spending to ensure that there's the same amount of spending before, but it's not going to come from the federal government. And then on the Medicare side, the bill says absolutely nothing about Medicare, but there's a whole separate set of laws called PAYGO, or Pay As You Go, which basically requires that over the life of a spending bill, that it is budget neutral. And in this case, the spending bill over 10 years, by whatever heuristics they use, is over by about $500 billion. And so that's required to be cut from the bill. That'll get cut from Medicare. So the bill, the legislation itself, doesn't touch Medicare. But in order to basically put the bill into law, Medicare is going to get cut $500 billion over 10 years because of the pay-as-you-go laws.
But there's also rules that anyone that is qualified, it cannot be cut. So no qualified person can have the benefits cut at all. So they don't get a reduction in benefits, and the qualifications of the people that get them do. They increased the verification laws, which they've estimated by people doing. We have groups of people that they believe aren't going to do it. Now, the thing is, though, too, first of all, like Kyle said, everything you read says cuts. There are no cuts. It doesn't exist. I thought there was. So I only learned about this like 2 days ago. And I started just diving into this in the last 48 hours. And I'm like, because I thought they literally cut. Not one qualification, though, from a person.
But it will lead to cuts, and it will lead to less funding. No,
it doesn't lead to cuts. It can't. Legally, it can't. So you cannot cut a qualified person.
Jay just explained how it will lead to cuts. They're not doing it. They're not the ones doing it, but other people will have to do it because of this bill.
It'll result in, I think what you're saying is, which was a good distinction, it will result in less funding.
It will result in, they believe, so how it's stated here, and it is, they're saying that approximately 7 million people in the next 10 years, or roughly $655 billion in cuts of provider reimbursements will take place. Now, the reason for that, though, is that the verification of the laws, and which are already qualifications put into place. But I think a lot of people are like, oh, you're just cutting our benefits. And qualified people are like, I'm going to lose my benefits. You're not. That's not at all happening. That it's not even law. You can't do that. And they don't do it. And it doesn't state that in the bill. So my only thing that I had a problem with, I think, with this bill, which I had beyond issues, that it's a grotesque thing. But it's like they're making it seem like they're actually cutting Medicare, Medicaid. And if you are a qualified person and you go through the appropriate
and you have stable internet access, you know how to upload a PDF, you also
have other means where you don't have to do that. You can also do it through social workers. You can go to the local office. So
every month, if you miss 1 month, all of a sudden you're not going to be able to.
So before, you didn't have to report your qualified hours. They estimated over 3 million people didn't qualify and were using it on simply alone not reporting.
Anyway, I did want to start this by saying some of the shitty stuff about the bill. I wanted to talk shit on this bill because I didn't want to seem inhumane when we talk about how great this can be for real estate investors, because it is going to hurt a lot of people, but real estate investors shouldn't be one of them. So if you look at the bill summary, especially for commercial real estate, there's some benefits as well for residential real estate and the different things. But if we're focusing mainly on we're commercial real estate investors, we got bonus depreciation, we got qualified business income, we have opportunity zones. We have a lot of things that are now, like, the one thing that surprised me, I thought this was just going to be like a 2029 thing. These are now things that are like in law, right? Like they're going forward. So, so AJ, why don't you take us away explaining how this bill is going to help us with as real estate investors?
There's a few benefits that we can take advantage of. Lots of them they're just either being set in stone or they're rolling back. So we get them again. And there's a few that, like, I guess with every bill, there's stuff that are good and no brainers. Of course, it's not all a steaming pile, just 99,999. But when we look at this, there's a few things that got rid of stupid stuff that they would argue about every year and would put investment into question, which then same with like the debt. They just argue it and end up doing it anyways. So it's like, why are we playing this game? Because it creates uncertainty. There's a few of the biggest values I'd say to investors they should know about is taxes, the permanent extension of the Trump era tax cuts, the 100% depreciation being restored on qualified assets. Now, this is in place for this year, which, of course, guess when they did it? This kind of crap just drives me nuts about politicians. Guess what?
January 20th?
January frickin' 20th. Why? Because he didn't want to give 1 day credit to Biden.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that you had a deal January 18th or something, so it didn't apply.
No. He didn't want to give 1 day credit to Biden. So he put it in there. That's so stupid, but it's politics.
But I'll take it. It was 40 and it was going down to 20.
Yeah.
So
No.
100 back.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I just thought that was stupid. But you're absolutely right. This is great. It needed to happen. I am a huge believer in the depreciation laws. And the reason I'm a huge believer in the depreciation laws is because I've been to and lived in other countries. And you see what happens to real estate and real estate investors when they don't have tax incentives. Things fall apart. It absolutely needs to happen. Plus,
Wait. Why? There's a difference between the depreciation, which makes sense, from a tax, and a bonus depreciation where you artificially put it all in year one, right? That's a huge difference.
Yes, and we get it. Yeah. So essentially, like, why is it from other countries?
Yeah. Like it's a critical. I agree with you. Like to be able to take to be able to take depreciation is huge. I mean, and necessary to incentivize people to buy real estate and to keep real estate, in the good condition. But bonus depreciation to me sounds, and I love it. Don't get me wrong, but it sounds pretty artificial. Like to be able to front load, instead of 27 and a half years or 35 years, it just gets all done in year one, which is the huge benefit.
Well,
right?
the whole idea is it's fake.
Yeah, the whole idea is it's a manufactured depreciation, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to be meant as a way to consolidate depreciation you're not going to get. So essentially, you're not going to hold it for that long, so you should get it, which also doesn't make, I guess, much sense. It's manufactured because you're going to sell it. But that is a boon to real estate investors.
Yeah, theoretically, I could go out and buy a property. I could do a cost seg. I could depreciate everything year one. And then 2 years later, I could turn around and sell it, having made no improvements, like just done nothing to the property. So nothing broke, nothing was fixed, nothing whatever. And then the next person could come in and do the exact same thing.
You'd have to repay it. Yeah,
for sure, you'd have to recapture. But I guess my point is that if you want to point out how it's a fake expense, if I don't do anything, nothing actually got depreciated. I'll go and sell it for more in 2 years.
But then you have to pay it back, so you didn't actually save it.
Sort of. There's two things to keep in mind here. One, there is a recapture, which means you have to pay it back. But think about it. Let's say I can get $2 million in depreciation that I can use to offset income. My tax bracket, I'm in the 30% tax bracket, let's say. That's $600,000. And let's say I hold the property for 3 years. That's $600,000 that I get to keep for 3 years. I can invest for 3 years. Let's say I make 10% a year. I've just made nearly $200,000 by not paying taxes for 3 years. So I made money there. The other thing is, let's say my effective tax rate's 30% on that $2 million in bonus depreciation. I'm only recapturing it at a maximum of 25%. So bonus depreciation,
which actually could be a negative because he could be.
Yes, exactly. You can get hit by that.
No, it's maximum of.
Right, but I guess my point was if you're in a certain bracket and whatever, you could have only had to pay 20 on it. But I guess I thought the point that you were going to make is okay, you all of a sudden you had that 600 and you got to pay recapture. What do? You're assuming that someone's buying one property and just stopping. You just do it again. You just buy another one again, take 100% depreciation and write it off.
Like if they didn't do this, nobody would invest in real estate. I mean, the amount of taxes, real estate taxes we pay is so astronomical. If I had to pay normal income on that, I would never touch real estate because the math would never work. It just wouldn't make sense at all because you're paying taxes upon taxes upon taxes. I mean, the amount of income you would make is just nothing as far as real income goes.
Right, and that's the whole point, though. We don't have like a flat tax where the purpose of the tax code is not to generate revenue. It's to incentivize people to do what the government wants you to do. And one of the things they want you to, there's two major things the government wants you to do. One is provide housing because they're not good at that. So they want you to provide housing or sell storage or whatever. And number two, they want you to create jobs because they don't create jobs. The private enterprise creates jobs. So how do you incentivize people to go build and create new housing for the ever increasing population? You give people tax breaks so that encourages them to allocate capital instead of allocating capital to, I don't know, buying a freaking worthless ranch. Ferrari, you go buy investment property so that you can build housing for people to live in because the government they need that for their population and they're not going to do it. So they need to incentivize people to do it. So
it essentially too. And this is so we're selling 100 million worth of real estate right now. And to tell you that it's a trap, it is really kind of a trap. It is not really that good when you think about it. Because that capture. If we don't want to pay, we can 1031 exchange it, right? But you have to 1031 exchange the total amount with debt to not pay it. So your ability then to take the money out is like gone, and you're 1031 exchanging.
You got to keep upgrading, basically. You got to keep going bigger and bigger.
And you're upgrading at a higher interest rate, so your returns actually go down. So now let's say we wanted to keep some of that money that we now have to reinvest. We want to keep it, so we're going to 1031 exchange part of it. So we got 50 million net. We're going to 1031 exchange out of that 50 million net, 30 million of it with debt to try to put it. That leaves us with 20 million. We have a $12 million tax bill because what you're getting is on the increase. It has nothing to do with debt. You pay taxes on the full 100 million. They don't care what your debt is. So all of a sudden, it's as if you made the entire gain and you didn't have debt and you have to pay taxes.
Well, the debt cuts both ways too, though, right? So like if you do the math on it, that's why bonus depreciation is so awesome for real estate investors. So let's just for easy math, let's say you're buying a $12 million property, right? And you put 70% debt on it. So you're only, so let's do 75. You put 75% debt in it. So you got 3 million, right? You have to bring to the table. Well, in general, 30% of most buildings, like if you do a cost seg, like think on average, it's like 30% of it is can be depreciated.
Yeah,
right?
But you have to pay for that in debt payments. That's not a free gimme. You have to pay for that in debt payments. And you have to also pay taxes on the full amount. So it's awesome when we get to invest in it, take advantage of it. But what I'm saying is it's not just this like free thing that we get. There's a huge tax burden associated.
The point that I was getting to though is that's how you get to like 100% depreciation. You get to get the entire depreciation benefit of the property, even though you only paid the down payment. You only paid for the equity portion. So that's how you can get like basically your tax write-off will be very close to the same amount of the money that you put in. So that's why you get these situations where there's a lot of people at the end of the year who are coming and being like, it's very easy when there's 100% bonus depreciation to raise money if you have a deal that's closing in November.
Yeah, because everybody wants to get the offset.
Right. Because someone will have done just exactly what you said, and they will say, shit, I have a $900,000 tax that I have to do. So what they do is they take $1 million and they invest it in someone's deal. And then all of a sudden they write it off and they just do it again. So it's only a problem if you stop doing it, or there are, so something like that, it's a good segue into something else in here. So there are things like opportunity zones where all of a sudden, if you're trying to get off this hamster wheel, if you're trying to get off this hamster wheel, then there are offshoots where it's like, you put it in a qualified opportunity zone, and that really, reduces the amount of tax that you can put in. Or there's always these disaster relief special opportunities that you can invest in that reduce your tax benefits. So,
And
or
this
tax
comes back
burden.
down to what Mauricio was talking about. All it is making you keep your money in. That's why I said it's like a trap. So the government puts huge incentives to get the money in, and then huge penalties to get it out, which is great. That's why it works. That's why buildings are updated. That's why we have new buildings, right? Because people are putting their money in to get the tax benefit to offset their income tax. Then they get it in, and then they got to keep doing it. They got to roll it over. And then the government says, hey, you want some more benefits? You need to go in this area that's this downtrodden area, and you have to put all these improvements to lift up that area, and then we'll give you tax benefits. So that's essentially what the tax code is. It's a incentive-based system, and once you get it in, the side effect this also has is it makes the rich get richer, because all you do is keep turning the capital over. So the rich aren't pulling their capital out. They're just reinvesting it over and over and over again, right? And because you can't, literally, the tax burden's so high, it's insane to try to pull it out. We like, I have two firms trying to help us figure out how we can even get some money out of this because it's so big. But that's what made us wealthy.
But to your point, it also helps folks that have, you're right, it helps a certain amount of people. Like, if you have an extra $100,000 sitting around, for example, you can put that $100,000 even into a syndication, like that's, or a property, whatever. But you put that in, and man, with bonus depreciation, there are situations where you would put in $100,000, and instead of giving it to Uncle Sam, you get to deduct that entire 100% of that from your. Now, most of the time it's 70-80%, but especially multifamily, you could literally at the end of the year, instead of writing $100,000 check to the government, you can write a $100,000 check to Jay Scott and deduct that 100% from your taxes. I mean, that's
a real return. You get that money. So like, you don't even need to make a return. Like, you literally got your money. So even if like it went bad, well, then you would write the loss off too, and you'd make another $100,000.
You would have lost 100% of your money if you had given it to the government. It would have been gone. I mean, it would have been, I guess,
it's a loss no matter what.
Well, no, it would have paid for the bombs in Iran and
that's true. That's true.
But from your perspective, it would have been gone into the abyss. Versus if I gave it to Jay, and even if he lost it all, it's still going. It's gone. Like, either way, it's gone.
Yep, exactly. And so that's the great thing about having, and that's why too, though, it's so important. Like, it's really, really important for the economy and for how our system works for it. I think it's great. I think they did a great job with it. Small business and other deductions, they bumped up from 1.25 to 2.5 million for the empowering small business and startups to invest more in equipment up front. It expanded how much of the deductions they can take for buying and investing in equipment up front out of the gate. I think, once again, I think that's a great thing. There's the worker incentives for income and overtime for deductions and disposable tax. There's they have some specific infrastructure investments. A lot of these are, like, you can look at like oil and gas, right? And you get huge deductions, and you can write that off, which I've done that quite a bit, because at the end of the day, it may be speculative. So if you are investing in discovery, you get to write off like 100% of it. Well, I'm like, well, why pay the government? I'll give it to an oil man, and if he strikes oil, great. If not, I was going to lose it anyways. I wasn't going to get it. So they're incentivizing you to, obviously, go for oil, get energy. That's all.
Well, it's a good way to think of it, right? Like, either they can go and raise taxes on common people, or they can basically tell you, hey, put your tax dollars to work, put the rich people's tax dollars to work other places.
Exactly. And that's the thing that I think most people don't understand. If you tax them and take it out, you're not taking it out of their pocket. You're taking it out of the system. That money's gone, right? And that has huge consequences. And that's why when you look at where allocation of capital goes in the United States, it is very different than lots of other countries. And it is obviously predicated on the things that we want and need that the government wants us to do. So it's like either you do it. If we have to do it, I have to tax you and take it from you to do it. And it's better that the private sector does it because they do a great job. I mean, they've done an awesome job in Brazil with their real estate and their government handling housing. Favelas are just chef's kiss. But
You're just biased because you lived in Brazil for 5 months.
I am, and I just love those favelas and those stacked on houses they're falling over. It's amazing. So there's these incentive laws in the bill. Once again, most of them are depreciation. They're expanding how much you can write off. What are the other ones?
Pass through was retained, which is obviously great for small business.
Yep. Pass through.
Unless you're a professional corporation.
What was the cap rate one? So if you the dollar saved expense. So saving dollars. I don't quite understand this one.
Well, you figured that one out, but the one that, let's talk about the one that didn't make the bill, which is huge. The one that didn't make the bill was the carried interest loophole, right? They were talking
or 1031.
They
were talking about those two.
Yeah, Trump wanted to so the carried interest loophole. It means if you're getting syndicators are great, but it's meant for hedge fund and venture capital. But if you have you own 20% of a syndication, right? That gets taxed at capital gains rate. They usually should be taxed as ordinary income. And so that was a loophole because a lot of the hedge funds, the Jamie Dimons, whatever, they're getting up. Trump wanted it gone. There was some debate. There was a lot of rumors that it would get gone. A lot of debate, not a lot of debate, but there was some debate on the floor about getting rid of it, and it ended up not. Trust me, the private equity firms, the venture capital firms, they went to town on the lobbying, so they kept that in there. So if you're a syndicator and you're getting that 20% carried interest, I think you do have to hold it for 3 years, but you get that as a capital gains versus the income as ordinary income, which is a huge. You were talking 30 to 30.
If that loophole had been closed, that negative would have outweighed all the benefits to real estate investors.
Well, so question, if it still happens under 3 years, to your point, but the question is that because we haven't sold properties in under 3 years, but I know a lot of people who did. So can you not offset that as with other passive losses if it's taxed at the normal income rates?
That's a CP. I don't know.
So this is the time I'm putting a disclaimer in here, everyone. We don't know jack about your taxes. We don't know what we're talking about. So everything that we're saying here is about the bill. How it applies to you and what you're doing has nothing to do with what we're saying. We are not CPAs. We are not accountants. Do not invest because you heard on Drunk Real Estate. I mean, come on. What we said about taxes, talk to your CPA.
What I can tell you is I'm pretty confident that if you sell within 3 years, that income would be considered ordinary income versus capital gains if you have it over there. Now, whether that gets offset by other, that's a different question. Like the offset and the depreciation, that's a discussion you need to have with your tax professional.
I think it still does as a real estate professional.
If you're a real estate professional, then it should still get offset.
The carried interest, though, I think one of the biggest things with that is it incentivizes, frankly, rich people to invest other people's money. If they didn't have it, they wouldn't do it. I wouldn't. I would never take other people's money. I'd just use my own.
AJ, but that's the whole point. The fact that you are out there, and all of you, both of you, all three of you, because I don't do it. The fact that you guys are out there raising capital and buying way more real estate that you could do on your own furthers the benefit or the objectives of the government. The government wants you to go buy 100 apartment units. If you didn't have that incentive, you would buy 2. So the fact that you have an incentive is what perpetuates your buying more and raising capital, and that's what the whole tax system is meant to be.
And you want people to have access to investments. Like the last thing we want to do is cut off investments for people that don't have tens of millions of dollars. And that's a whole thing that I have with the accreditation laws. We won't get into that. But we do not want to have a system that bars regular people and rich people even from investing in all these assets, and you only have one class that can do it. That's not a good thing. So it literally opens up investment opportunities, and I think that's a really good thing.
And if you want to get a little bit more specialized, I know there are some people who do LIHTC stuff. The credits for that actually got a little bit of a bump, so they are trying to put in there some more affordable housing things. But at the same time, I have heard, and I'm having trouble because this is still relatively new and it is 900 pages. I'm having trouble trying to figure out on the low end. So there are people who do investments with like Section 8 and things like that. And there seems like a bit of a debate on people who supply housing to the real low end users, whether there's going to be an issue or if actually it's going to be a good thing for them there. So I don't know if you guys have looked into the Section 8, the whole HUD, the LIHTC stuff, but maybe that's for another episode. But I think it's kind of one of those, like, I don't think there's any debate for people who are doing workforce and higher end and new construction and stuff like that, that this is a lot of really good things that, to AJ's point, they were in before the previous tax bill, but they, have been sunsetting, or they, just a little less beneficial, and now they're back. But these are all really beneficial for those users, but it might be a bit of a question mark for people who are dealing in the Section 8
No, I think
providing
so.
housing.
Where it comes with Section 8 and lower house classes is improvements. Now, the problem though with Section 8, like it has and always has, if you're not, you can't get higher rents. So you're capped. So even if you had, like, if I was going to be able to accelerate and get better depreciation on a Section 8 housing, and I'm going to invest $2 million into it, that's great to get some depreciation. But why would I ever do that? It makes no sense. So you get the same depreciation and you can do it. Just, why would you ever do it? Because you don't get a return off it. So having capped rents stops you from getting anything except that one-time benefit. Whereas I can go do that in anything else, and I can get the one-time benefit plus all future benefits. And that's why, generally speaking, even though they still get the same allotted advantages that all the other real estate does, people don't do it.
Yeah. I think one of the main arguments is basically, like, if you do the math, like, even the Senate, so the House version, with these increases to LIHTC and stuff like that, they estimated they were going to create 500,000 new affordable housing units. Well, now the Senate's versions actually went even further, and they're estimating it's going to be 1 million, they've increased basically some of the tax credits that are available. They've actually made it kind of easier for them to get, things like that. I don't want to get into the details, but then at the same point, people are saying it might be a lot tougher for that demographic that you're targeting, for people to use these tax credits, and for the people to get the vouchers and to be able to afford these units, that a lot of the these changes, that they won't necessarily be able to take advantage of these units. So maybe that's somebody who's more in tune. We have very little Section 8 stuff, so it's like it's not something we're really.
That's not my area of specialty at all,
Yeah.
obviously.
Is that beneath you, Kyle?
No, actually, Section 8 can be very lucrative, and people who are very good at it, like, if you focus on it, the problem is it's reporting requirements, and like, once we getting back into it, red tape stuff, right? Like, when you're dealing with the government, you got a lot of stuff that you got to deal with. And so it's not worth it unless you're kind of going all in. But if you're going all in and you got good systems.
So if you don't do the inspections, and if you
It's
don't,
required.
so why in Medicaid did they allow it to not? That's weird.
I see what you did there, AJ. But as far as if you are tuned into it, like, basically 90% of that every rent payment every month is guaranteed, right? Like, it's coming from the government and they're going to pay it. So like when we talk about like, oh, we were at 96% collections this month, yay. Well, like if you're really good at your Section 8, you're doing better than that because the money's coming from the government, and it's basically a golden ticket for some of these people to get that Section 8 voucher, and they're not going to miss their payment.
We should have someone that's really good at that, because that world, the people that kill it in it, they do good.
Yeah. Well, and that would be a good segment to talk about. Hey, like how is this changing things? Because I see a lot of chatter about it, and I've seen headlines going both ways. Like this is the end of Section 8, and then I saw another headline. A guy, all he does, he's like, this is great for Section 8. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. But I'm disappointed though. I'm not going to be able to buy any public land. Wasn't this bill supposed to include a bunch of public land sell off? I got a ton of that around me that I was just hoping to jump on.
Kyle, I will slap you into next week. I will slap you into next week, Kyle. No.
Oh, come on. You would have bought one of those.
I would have bought so much, but I would have been so upset about it. I would have been I would have lost my flipping mind, but I would have bought a lot.
I was gonna syndicate buying the mountain right next to AJ.
I would have already had it.
This was the business plan I tried to get AJ to do. So the business plan that I tried to get AJ to do is he buys a big swath of land with the intention of actually just making it a hunting preserve, because that's a thing you do, right? But then you draw up plans to develop it. But then you put a value on it. This is the value of the land under this use case. But then you preserve it. So you designate it as preserved wildlife, the blue and green tax credits, depending on if you have water and stuff like that. And then because of the value of the land that you could have, if you developed it, you write off that value and you get a tax break on it.
Only if you donate it. You have to donate it back to the government as a conservation easement.
I think that's a separate program, Jay. I think this is a program where if you designate it as conservation,
you can keep control, and you keep within it, but you can't develop it. You can't you have to obey within the guidelines of it.
Right. Now that might be going away because they did cut a shit ton of the environmental stuff.
Yeah, and then you got to spend the next 10 years in litigation with the IRS because you.
I have been since 2017. Let's change the subject because it's a poor subject for me.
All right.
Before we move on, breaking news. So this isn't part of the big bill that we were just talking about, but just a couple hours ago, FHFA, the Federal Housing Finance Administration, or whatever that stands for, announced that as of now, that rent payments can now be used as part of your credit score when qualifying for mortgages with Fannie and Freddie. So basically, when Fannie and Freddie is looking at your credit score, your Experian and
both ways, or just one way?
Yeah, can they hit you for it?
Both ways, you get hurt and hit.
I've been late on my rent for the last 6 months. That's a problem.
Yeah, so I don't know the details, but apparently now rent payments are part of your credit score.
It's both ways, because if we have that all of a sudden, like these people who know how to game the system, and they basically know that we're not going to spend the $800 to finalize the eviction just when they've already skipped and they haven't trashed our place.
No, Kyle, nobody games systems. Nobody uses the system. They don't game it. They follow the rules.
Even in Texas, they game it now. It's bullshit.
No, Kyle, they don't underreport their Medicaid hours. They don't utilize that.
By the way,
I'm done, Kyle.
Okay, I'm getting excited for the top 10. Let's go.
All right.
But before we get into Kyle's top 10, which I'm sure will be pathetic and lame and whatever, we don't have to take our shoes off anymore when we go through TSA. I mean, I know AJ doesn't have to deal with that anymore.
Was that in the bill?
That was, yeah. They got freaking rid of it.
They got rid. So next time, unless you're AJ, because you do something different, but the rest of us, the common folks, when we go to the airport and we go through TSA, we no longer have to remove our shoes.
I actually don't like that they changed that, because I've had TSA pre-check and I always felt like I was privileged because I didn't have to take my shoes off.
I lost mine when I brought a gun into the airport, so I'm really glad that we did it. That we got rid of that. So that's great.
Let's be. I'm not a fan of security theater like the TSA. I'm not a fan of all the crazy stuff. But I will say this: there's a little piece of me that is bothered by the fact that Congress has the authority to decide security measures for things like airports. I'm not saying I'm not happy about this change, but it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder what other things they could just arbitrarily decide to change that could
Just like
actually
they
impact our
arbitrarily
security.
said, here's all the new rules. Like you have to take off your shoes.
You're right, Jay. It should definitely just be Kash Patel, because he's the one who he's very qualified to be deciding that stuff.
Yeah, and AJ, next time you're in town, you should consider maybe you come visit me and just helicopter, just drop your helicopter right there.
You have a perfect landing. Pat.
Helicopter it in, drop it down here, and then we'll do the podcast together right here.
Okay, Kyle.
Are we ready for my top 10?
Oh
No.
no,
You're born ready.
no.
So you actually, I hyped this up way too much because you guys aren't going to find this funny, but anyone from Philly is going to find it hilarious.
Nobody's from Philly. Nobody cares about Philly. Nobody. Philly,
Geno's is number one.
Well, it's kind of along those lines. So you probably haven't heard, but Philadelphia is getting their first female professional sport since 2008, and it's a women's basketball team.
We definitely have not heard
Definitely
that.
didn't hear that about that.
Yeah, no, I didn't think you guys were watching the WNBA. I do have a house full of girls, so Caitlin Clark is a thing in our household. So like it's
I know
a thing.
Caitlin Clark.
So anyway,
Is she related to Jennifer Connelly or whatever?
Okay, let's let him get on with this.
of course, what happens is when the WNBA when they're getting a new team, they got to pick a name, right? And so just like any other time, when they want to do a boat name and they put it to a poll and it ends up being Bodie McBoatface, is the name. Well, they put it to a poll but they did it in an unofficial poll online that's not held to anything. And so I'm going to go through the top 10 names, and some of them are serious and some of them aren't.
I vote for Philadelphia females.
So it's some of them. You're not far off, Jay. And so you guys know, I'm sure you don't know a lot about Philadelphia, but you know some things. So like Philadelphia, Liberty Bell, and like the names of the other teams and stuff. But anyway, one of the other things that's big in Philadelphia is the Mummers. And people only knew about that because Jason Kelce dressed up as one when he did his Super Bowl speech. And so it's a huge thing. There's a Mummers parade and everyone dresses up like crazy. So number 10, I'm going up with the Philadelphia Bad Mummer Jummers. The next one is the Philadelphia Force, but spelled with PH. Next one is the Philadelphia Phillies. Now there is already the Philadelphia Phillies, but the change to this is they put an F on the front. So it looks like Philadelphia Phillies, like female horses. So that was a fun one. A serious one is the Philadelphia Rage, because way back in the day, that's what there was a WNBA team Philadelphia called that. Philadelphia Freedom is actually a good one.
Elton John song.
That's my favorite one right there.
Yeah. The next one is Philadelphia Johns. So John is something that is a made up word that is in Philadelphia that no one, if you're not from Philadelphia, understands what it means. But the Philadelphia Johns, spelled Jawns. And then, okay, we're getting to the top two. These are my two favorite. Number 2, the Philadelphia She Steaks. That was my number 2. And number 1, so I'm sure you know, Philadelphia is known, the major street that goes through the center of Philadelphia is called Broad Street. When Philadelphia was the dominant in hockey, they were called the Broad Street Bullies. The Broad Street's a big thing in Philadelphia. So obviously, number 1 would just be the Philadelphia Broads. So it's probably going to be something more serious like the Philadelphia Freedom or the Philadelphia Rage or something like that. But if they came out and made
I like the
Broads,
Philadelphia Broads. That's a good one.
I was pretty close with my Philadelphia females.
How about Philadelphia? Who gives a shit?
Oh, geez.
That'd be
All right,
cool.
we see where you
Aggressive.
land. Mauricio's totally anti-female sports. I see how it is.
No, I'm
He
actually
doesn't think
anti-top
women
tens.
deserve to have sports.
Why are you guys in Philadelphia? Is really what I want to figure out.
He's one of those guys. I get it. Okay, I get it.
I like the Philadelphia fentanyls. That's what I'm going for. So
Well, we do get all of our fentanyl from Canada in Philly. So All right. Mauricio, you got anything to plug? You need some money for your ranch or anything?
Really, I need a lot of money for my remediation of my house. Um,
So sign up for his coaching program.
sign up for my coaching, my inner circle at coaching with Mauricio. If you want to learn how to raise capital compliantly, be up to speed with all of these new regulations that are coming out daily. Actually, every minute there's a new regulation that comes out. Go to coachingwithmauricio.com if you're interested in finding out how I can help you raise capital legally. Like I've helped you guys. You guys were all doing it illegally when I met you. Now you're doing it compliantly.
100% true.
Fair enough. AJ, what do you got?
You know what? I'm raising for my tech fund. So it's a diversified of the 3 software systems in our tech stack. They're already existing, running. They're market centric. It's the last seed round for all of them. And I have all the remaining shares, and I've been allowed to allow my investors to come into it. I've already invested in them. I'm putting millions more into them personally. So we're allowing our investors to come along with us into those 3 companies. There's never been that before in storage, obviously. They are groundbreaking, incredible companies. We have to have them to run our business. And so it's kind of a cool thing. Never done that. Never had a tech fund before. I've risen for different tech companies, and so we've done. But this is an actual tech fund.
Yeah, you have. Wait. You have risen? Is that what you said?
He has risen.
You said you have
I have
is
risen.
AJ is Jesus. He has
All right.
risen. He has risen.
I am the self-storage Jesus.
AJ, are any of your jets in that fund? Is that part of the benefits if you're
Kyle,
an investor?
we don't
You-
talk
Kyle,
about this.
depending on how much you raise or how much you give me, I'll get you can go on the bed.
Dude, AJ, I don't know why you have not done a like investor mastermind 10,000. Like we should do an episode on one of my planes.
I like it.
Jay, what do you got, buddy?
So only a couple days left, but I will mention it again. This will be the last time I mention it for a while because there is only a couple days left. But anybody that's looking to invest in a ground-up multifamily syndication or ground-up multifamily development, we are building 351 units just outside of Dallas. Class A, gorgeous complex in a master plan community. Breaking ground in a couple months, raising now. And anybody that's interested in investing, feel free to reach out to me. And I will say that if and when the SEC passes the rule to allow finders, we will happily pay you a finder's fee for referring investors.
Or you could just do a tribe vest
Or you could do a tribe vest. We should talk about tribe vest at some point.
I think you should do a fund of funds that invests in Rogaine and gets a lot of.
Stop looking at my hair.
Well, so the only problem with fund of funds is it's expensive, right, to set up because you have to go through some syndication lawyer, and these guys, like, they got to fund their ranches
We want to keep you out of jail. That's kind of such an inconvenience,
But there, that's why Jay said like that tribe vest is actually another option, kind of done for you. But can we talk about we talk about young people not buying houses while we're doing this? If we're doing these ground up designs, like these A-class designs, you should see these fucking buildings. It's like living in the Ritz-Carlton, the pools, like all of the fitness centers, the amenities, like all these things that these brand new A-class things. I'm looking at this like, geez, this is nicer than my house. Like, why would anybody want to buy a house when you could just do that, live in a brand new unit, and everything's taken care of for you? And
but the problem is you live in Philadelphia, so I understand the reference point. But yeah, I mean, let's get with the times. You actually can get some really
I got a nice
stuff around the
house.
country.
We put up the house back when we did okay. My wife's a pretty good designer when it comes to real estate. All right, for my plug, actually now AJ's mentioned tech. I will do back behind me Conference Connect. You can now get discounts on conferences. So if you go on the website, there's a little request to get a discount. A lot of conferences now all have discounts. So if you click on it, you can get a discount. I know for sure that Limitless, we got Limitless coming up. I think Jay is speaking at Limitless. Mauricio, you might be speaking at Limitless. My wife might be speaking at Limitless.
Dude,
That's just an example.
I know I did my plug, but like Limitless, other than AJ's conference, I want to put that disclaimer. Limitless is one of my favorite conferences of all time. It's just a really nice conference. Other than AJ's, if you're into self storage, go check out AJ. But otherwise, I think Limitless it's a pretty freaking awesome event.
Yeah, and if you want a discount to go to Limitless, you're thinking about going, you're like, I could use, a little price off. Go check it out, Conference Connect. Click the button, you'll get a discount, or any other conference you got going up. Go check it out.
And there'll be no plugging BadAsh today. Just to be clear.
She had a podcast earlier. We already did a plug.
No plug. There's no plug on BadAsh.
She was on a podcast earlier with Steve Rosenberg, and she plugged me. So
yeah, but you don't get to plug her tonight. You don't get to plug her. Sorry.
All right, good episode, guys. We almost snuck it under 9:00, but those are the breaks. It still looks super bright out at that West Coast. It's just nice and bright. Looks sunny there. I'm jealous. It's almost time to go to bed here. All right, that's all I got, guys. My drink's gone. I got to hit the head. I will see you next Thursday.
See you guys.
Late.
See ya.